Hello, I'm Jerry Landry. I will be the host of the Presidencies podcast. Before we launch our first episode, I wanted to do a series of mini episodes just to give you a feel of what you can expect from this podcast, as well as just start talking about the issues. With this podcast, I see it as a way of examining the past in order to better understand the present and where we're going in the future. As we're seeing right now in 2016 leading into 2017, presidential transitions are not always easy. Indeed, one of the earliest ones, the transition from John Adams to Thomas Jefferson in 1801, was quite contentious. The election of 1800 had been very raucous, had been very emotional. And then with the Electoral College controversy with Jefferson and his running mate Aaron Burr getting the same amount of electoral votes and Congress trying to decide which one should be president, the Federalists thinking about using this for political gain, etc., etc., it ended up that John Adams, rather than doing as we now think of as the commonplace, the outgoing president riding with the incoming president to the inauguration, John Adams didn't even go to the inauguration. He left in the middle of the night, he grabbed a stagecoach, and made his way back to Massachusetts. Likewise, his son, John Quincy Adams, didn't attend his successor, Andrew Jackson's inauguration. However, for the most part, outgoing and incoming presidents have tried to be as peaceful as possible, even if the election was rather contentious. Though Herbert Hoover was greatly distressed after losing the 1932 election, he attempted to work with Franklin Delano Roosevelt and to try and get his input on policy while he was still president before FDR's inauguration. However, that hit on some roadblocks, and FDR didn't really want to be pinned down at that point. He wanted more of a free hand to be able to make his own policy rather than having Hoover either save the day or commit him to a policy that he may ultimately need to break. This was difficult for Hoover, and by the point of the inauguration, though they did ride together, apparently Herbert Hoover and FDR did not speak once in the ride to the Capitol. One other rather contentious transition was between Eisenhower and JFK. They were seen, and really this came out in the election, that JFK represented a new generation. And so there was this generational gap between the outgoing and incoming president, to the point that Eisenhower mockingly referred to Kennedy as Little Boy Blue. And apparently Kennedy had some choice words to say about Eisenhower, which I will not repeat here, as they involved some expletives. History will tell how the 2017 transition comes through, but hopefully this helps to provide you with a little context that it's not always a peaceable transition of power. However, in the case of 1800, though the transition may not have been peaceable in terms of emotions and sentiments, the transition itself happened, and it was peacefully done. There was no warfare, there was no shooting, there was no fighting, there was just one president left, and the next president came in. Power was transferred without a shot being fired. And at that point, and even in the present day, the fact that we can have that peaceful transition of power from one party to another is one of the often underappreciated strengths of our system of government. Thank you so much for joining me for this mini episode. I hope you'll join me when our first episode launches on January 22nd. Thanks again, and have a happy New Year.
History is the greatest adventure story. But does it ever leave you wondering what the women were doing all that time? This is Lori from the Her Half of History podcast, and the answer is that some women were seizing power, or escaping slavery, or spying for their country, or creating artistic masterpieces, while countless others were doing the laundry, getting married, and wondering why their clothes don't have more pockets. If you would like to hear the stories of women doing all of those things, check out Her Half of History at herhalfofhistory.com or wherever you get your podcasts.